Hello, Internet. I'm KrissieDeathy, and today I'm going to read you guys Chapter 19 from TW's Sonadow Sonic Shadow Shorts. I have so much trouble saying Sonadow. You have no idea. It just sounds weird coming out of my mouth. So TW is one of my patrons on Patreon, and every month my patrons can decide whether or not I sing a song or read a story of their choice. Each Patreon gets that right, and this is TW's, and this month she wanted me to read Chapter 19, which she said was one of her favorites that she had written. So yeah, we're going to continue with this. So let's begin. Modern Sonic and Classic Sonic were on the hunt for the Chaos Emeralds in order to go up against and defeat the monster that was tearing through time. Where could that fourth Chaos Emerald be? Sonic asked as he glanced around the white, empty land space. The Shadow, whose line is, "Where's that damn fourth Chaos Emerald?" Most likely Sonic, I'm hoping. Classic Sonic gently tugged at Sonic's glove to get his attention. Sonic looked down at his past self and watched as he lifted his hand and pointed slightly upwards. Sonic followed his finger and noticed the Chaos Emerald floating on the platform above the city escape area. However, he was more drawn to the person standing next to it. It was Shadow. Classic Sonic turned his attention off the Chaos Emerald and also looked at Shadow. His mouth gaped open as he stared in wonder. "Come on, let's go get it," Sonic declared, racing off towards the platform. He stopped when he noticed that Classic Sonic was no longer with him. He glanced back and saw the young hedgehog was still standing there, staring at Shadow. Sonic walked back to him and waved his hand in front of Classic Sonic's face, helping to snap him back to reality. "Come on, we have to hurry," Sonic insisted. Classic Sonic nodded firmly and followed after Sonic, this time round as they rushed over to the Chaos Emerald. "Hey, Shadow," Sonic greeted once they reached the black and red hedgehog. Shadow turned towards him and unfolded his arms. "Sonic, it's good to see you. You're the first person I've seen ever since I got here," he responded. "Good to see you too," Sonic replied, walking up to his friend and patting him on the arm. Shadow lifted his other hand, and so did Sonic, and then the two put their hands together, allowing their fingers to intertwine. Classic Sonic watched them closely with a strong sense of curiosity. Sonic let go of Shadow's hand and took a step back, rejoining his other companion. "So how did you end up here?" he asked. Shadow sighed. "A creature came out of nowhere and grabbed me. I passed out, and when I woke up, I was here, with nothing but this Chaos Emerald," he said, nodding at the colorless gem that was floating above them. "However, it doesn't seem to be physically here, wherever here is." Coughs. "We'll have to restore it somehow," Sonic commented. "We need to defeat that creature that brought us all here." Shadow glanced over at Classic Sonic, who he hadn't even noticed due to his silence. "Who's this?" he asked, nodding at Classic Sonic. "Oh, this is a past version of me. He hasn't even met you yet, or most of my friends," Sonic explained. "Sonic, meet Shadow. He's rather special to me," he said, introducing his younger self to his partner. "That's an understatement," Shadow commented. Sonic blushed. He looked down at Classic Sonic once again, only to notice that he hadn't been paying attention the entire time. He was simply standing there, staring at Shadow dreamily with half-closed eyelids. Sonic quickly nudged him, snapping him out of his trance a second time. Classic Sonic blinked a couple of times and then shook his head. He looked at Shadow and then down at the ground, while scratching his head timidly. After a brief moment of awkward silence, he plucked up the courage to look at Shadow dead in the eye and waved at him. Shadow raised an eyebrow. "Not much of a talker?" he questioned, turning to modern Sonic for an answer. "No, he's a hedgehog a few words," Sonic replied. "I can relate." Shadow gave Classic Sonic a small smile, whilst the young hedgehog avoided making eye contact, most likely due to embarrassment. "So how do we restore it?" he asked, turning his attention back to the Chaos Emerald. Well, Sonic here was able to restore other Chaos Emeralds by defeating Metal Sonic. "So I guess the only way to bring this one back would be," he trailed off at Shadow. "For us to fight," Shadow finished for him. "We don't really have any other option." "Let's do it," he insisted. "Okay, you're sure?" Sonic replied. Shadow clenched his fist. "Definitely." Sonic looked at his younger self. You stay here, little buddy. I'll be back soon, he told him, and then approached Shadow. Don't expect me to go easy on you just because I like you, the black and red hedgehog teased. Come on, Shadow. Not in front of the kid. Shadow smirked, and Sonic couldn't help but return it with his own smirk. Their smiles faded as they remembered the task at hand. They briefly nodded at one another before jumping in unison and touching the emerald at the same time. A bright flash of light erupted from the emerald, blinding classic Sonic. When the light cleared and his eyes were able to adjust, he realized that Sonic and Shadow were gone, leaving him alone. He stood there for a moment, waiting for them to return. When some time passed, despite the fact that there wasn't really any time in this limbo-like place, he decided to walk over to the edge of the platform and sat down, allowing his legs to dangle over the edge and swing them gently. He looked down at his hands and began flexing his fingers. He then lifted them up and slowly moved his hands together until they made contact. He allowed his fingers to interlock in the same way that Sonic and Shadow had done earlier. He never seen something fit so perfectly together before. A bright flash caught classic Sonic's attention. He quickly stood up and turned around to discover that Sonic and Shadow returned. They were currently in a strong embrace, with Shadow's arms wrapped around Sonic's head and Sonic's arms wrapped around Shadow's waist. They had their eyes closed and their heads were pressed up against each other. Classic Sonic stared, fascinated by their connection. He watched as Sonic opened his eyes and nuzzled Shadow's nose with his own. Then they finished their embrace and took a step back from one another. That fight was just like old times, Shadow commented. Yeah, especially the part where you lost, Sonic replied teasingly. Shadow narrowed his eyes at him while Sonic grinned cheekily. The two then looked up at the chaos emerald that had now regained its yellow color and floated down to them. Shadow grabbed the emerald before Sonic could take it. He clutched it in his hand and tossed it to his partner. You show that creature what you're made of. Sonic caught the emerald. I will, he replied strongly. We will, he corrected himself after remembering classic Sonic's presence. I'll make sure that I'm there for the final fight if you need anything. Then just know, I've got your back. Shadow informed him, always. Good luck to you two, Shadow addressed classic Sonic. The younger hedgehog seemed flattered by the fact that Shadow acknowledged him. See you soon, Shadow, Sonic said his goodbyes. Not if I see you first. And with those parting words, the two Sonics left in search for the other three emeralds. As they were walking, Sonic couldn't help but feel curious about what was going on inside classic Sonic's head. He had been acting odd ever since they ran into Shadow, and he had a sneaking suspicion as to why. Sonic, he addressed his companion. His younger self turned towards him. I was wondering if you had any sort of feelings for Shadow. Feelings that you might not have felt before. Classic Sonic gazed down at the ground and nodded slowly in response. That's weird. I didn't fall for Shadow like that. Then again, I don't remember any of this. I guess we're just rewriting a part of my own history at this point. Classic Sonic sagged as he sighed deeply. Sonic noticed this and decided to put a comforting arm around him. Hey, after all this is over, how about I help you with your crush? Maybe get him to notice you a little more. Would you like that? A spark of hope gleamed in classic Sonic's eyes. He nodded furiously without thought. I have a feeling this isn't going to end well. Sonic smiled. I knew you would. We should prepare you now before you end up in my shoes. Or our shoes. I don't know which one. Classic Sonic's face beamed with happiness and smiled from ear to ear. Perhaps he could experience what it was like to be in a relationship like Sonic and Shadow's after all. After defeating the Time Eater, Sonic and his friends were returned to the party, where everything was exactly how they had left it, almost, if they had never been gone. Surprisingly enough, classic Sonic and Tails were also teleported there. Classic Tails and modern Tails were talking, since classic Tails wanted to learn as much as possible from his older self. The rest of Sonic's friends were talking amongst themselves, while classic Sonic walked around the area, taking in the sweet country air until he eventually came across a patch of flowers with colorful petals. It was a nice change from the white space they had once resided in. Classic Sonic examined the flowers, wondering which one he should pick. He eventually decided that he'd take one orange-colored flower and proceeded to kneel down and pluck it from the soil. He stood up, clutching the stalk tightly in his grasp, and rushed over to Sonic, who had been leaning against the tree the majority of the time. The young hedgehog lifted the flower up to him, impressed by his own find. Sonic smiled and gave him a thumbs up. That's great. Shadow isn't really the type of person who likes flowers, but I'm sure he'll love this. Classic Sonic cocked his head in confusion. Because it's coming from you, he explained, touching Classic Sonic's chest, which was the area where his heart was. Now, go on. Go give it to him, he instructed. Classic Sonic pulled the flower close to his chest and glanced over at Shadow, who was currently talking with Rouge. He then looked up at Sonic nervously. Go on, he insisted. I'll be right behind you. Classic Sonic clenched the flower tighter. He took a deep breath and then exhaled slowly. He could do it. He knew he could. He took a couple of steps forward and then glanced back at Sonic just to make sure that he was there. He was behind him and urged him to go over with a small hand gesture. The young hedgehog sighed and approached Shadow. He lifted his hand and hesitated for a brief moment. He held his breath and tapped him on the back. Shadow paused the discussion with Rouge and turned around, not noticing Classic Sonic at first, due to him being shorter than him, but he quickly realized and looked down at him. Classic Sonic didn't even look him in the eye, instead he held the flower up to him, blushing all the while. Shadow was bewildered, quickly looking over at Monarch, who was just smiling proudly, as if the younger version of himself was his son. He then looked at Shadow and grinned. Seeing Sonic's face allowed Shadow to catch on, so he turned his attention back to Classic Sonic and knelt down in order to become level with him. He paused for a moment, watching his movement before lifting his hand and holding it out to the young hedgehog. Classic Sonic lifted his head and looked at Sonic's hand and then gazed at Shadow himself. The black and red hedgehog simply nodded at him. Classic Sonic lifted his hand and put it in Shadow's larger hand. Their fingers intertwined the same way that modern Sonic and Shadow had done so before. Shadow gave him a small smile and released his hand. Using his newfound confidence, Classic Sonic lifted up the flower and slid it between Shadow's quills. The flower hung loosely but managed to stay in place, even when Shadow rose to full height. Thanks for the gift, he said gratefully. He paused trying to find the right word. Well, you're really sweet, and I don't use that word very often. Classic Sonic blushed and scratched the side of his head bashfully. Hey Sonic, our ride is here, Classic Tails cried out, pointing at a portal that led to the time where they were originally from. Classic Sonic briefly looked at Shadow before rushing over to his friend. It's a shame you have to go, Modern Tails commented. But we sure had a great adventure. We hope you learned a few tricks that will help you out in the future. I mean, the past. Well, you know what I mean. Shadow drew closer to them, especially when it comes to romance, Sonic added cheekily. Classic Sonic nodded firmly. Well, we really enjoyed meeting you, but we have to go now. Thanks for everything. We sure learned a lot, Classic Tails said. And thank you. We couldn't have done it without you, Sonic responded. Classic Tails and Modern Tails had a double high five, while Classic Sonic and Modern Sonic only had a single. The two then rushed off towards the portal, and Sonic called after him. Hey Sonic, enjoy your future, it's going to be great, he exclaimed, giving him a thumbs up. Classic Tails entered the portal first, but Classic Sonic paused for a moment. He looked back at Sonic and Shadow. He rushed over to them, hugged Modern Sonic tightly, and he embraced him. Classic Sonic then released him with the Shadow and beckoned him to lean down. Once he did so, he gave him a quick kiss on the cheek. Classic Sonic blushed, but ran back to the portal before another word could be said. He paused once again and looked back at the two. Shadow smiled at him and waved goodbye. Classic Sonic waved farewell before jumping into the portal and leaving them behind. Sonic and Shadow looked at one another and linked hands. Sonic then lifted his free hand and adjusted the flower so that it would fit neatly between Shadow's quills before leaning in and kissing him passionately on the lips. He pulled his head away and smiled. That was just a little gift from the past. This story was amusing. I wasn't sure where it was going at first. Now I'm just amused. Classic Sonic was written very adorably. I enjoyed reading this. And so, yep. So, thank you all so much for listening, really. Not much being shown on the screen, I'm sure. I hope you all enjoyed it. If there's any fan fictions or poetry or other stories you guys would actually like me to read, please feel free to leave comments down below. And yeah, thank you all so much for listening. Bye bye.